Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by the Hockey Podcast Network. We are joined right now for a very special guest interview on the show. For the first time is Carter and Nate of the Quack Report. How's it going, boys?
Pretty good.
It's nice to have you guys on, especially because initially we were slated, Nick and Nick, to cover the Ducks on the Quack Report, and then we jumped over, and luckily two much more established, I would say much more deserving hosts started covering the Quack Report. So it's nice to finally get to talk to you guys.
I wouldn't say established necessarily. What we had, we were 2 episodes in on our own show at that point.
Yeah.
Like that was really it.
Pretty generous, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where we all basically were before we were scooped up by Dylan and Isha. But either way, we're here now to talk about some Dayton Heinen, talk about some Anaheim Ducks, and really just sit down and have a nice conversation about hockey. So to start this off, I do want to talk about Dayton Heinen because that is the pressing issue for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Basically, one of the 2 big signings this year for Ron Hextall. And the first thing I wanted to ask you guys is, what line did he play on? Like, who were his line mates? And what do you guys attribute him having kind of a lackluster offensive season to?
Carter, you remember the lineups better than I do.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of blend everything you were touching on together, I think his lack of offense generated from the fact that he didn't really have consistent line mates. There was the season was kind of a weird one for the Ducks just because there was hardly any offense. So, you know, the coaching staff was blending the lines and just trying to find something that was working. So, I mean, there was times Heinen was playing with Getzlaf. There was times he was playing with other young guys like Zegras, like just up and down the lineup, kind of all over the place. So I think that might be part of it. But also, if you look at his numbers over the last few seasons, they've slowly been declining as well. So there's got to be some other factors in there too. But in terms of, I guess, line mates, and maybe it's hard to blame his line mates on lack of offense, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just to kind of like encapsulate all of that, but also just talk about like the team as a whole. Yeah, offense was just the main problem out of this year, and that's what I think they tried to start to address it more in the draft and that sort of thing, getting some guys who can generate offense and get some more goals and that sort of thing. Like, honestly, man, like Bob Murray, the GM of the Anaheim Ducks, even reached out to Carter to try to get some offense, right? Like to bring him into the roster. And like Carter can't hit a fucking broadside of a barn, but like
means they're desperate.
Very desperate. Man, it was just so frustrating, like watching like potential chances just turn into nothing, just play after play, basically. So like it actually gave you a reason to cheer when they finally did put the puck in the back of the net. Most of the time it was ugly. There wasn't anything really great about it, I guess.
Were you guys like let down by Heinen's play over his course in Anaheim? Because he seemed to have a better, at least statistically, a better time in Boston than they did in Anaheim when he got sent there. Like, was that what you expected, a decline, or were you expecting the higher rate of scoring that he had in Boston?
I mean, I think as fans, when you acquire a new player, you always have high expectations for them. Like you want them to be as successful as they were in their most successful season, which I think was kind of his first full season in Boston, from what I remember. I think that's when he set career high numbers. But so, I mean, I didn't obviously expect, 40 or 50 points from him, but just consistent depth scoring and competing for a consistent spot in the lineup. And I guess because it was a shortened season, I think he played like 40-some games or something like that. I guess I do have his stats up. I cannot guess. Yeah, like 43 games. But still, there was times he was out of the lineup, so it would have been nice to see him in a little bit more consistently. But yeah, I think that answers your question. Nate, do you have anything you want to add to that? Or
yeah, the consistency, I think Carter touched on it earlier as well, was just, it was the line mates and whatnot. And that was the entire roster every night was put in a blender by our head coach there. Man, we are so deep into the offseason. Why can't I even remember his name right now? It shows you just how much I wanted him out, though, actually, that I'm like trying to forget his name already. But yeah, I mean, he was doing all right offensively. I'd like to think like it wasn't great, but like over the course of Boston and Anaheim in the 1920 shortened season there, he did have 26 points, 10 goals. And over in it would be, oh God, can I do the math in my head here really quick? 67 games. And in 43, he had 14 points and had 7 goals. So like the goal scoring was there. And if I'm not mistaken, like this will show you how awful like the Ducks offense was, though. I believe he was like in the top 5 for goal scorers. Was he not, Carter?
Oh, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, because I believe
I'm
it was
trying to block out how bad our team was last year.
Fair
so
enough. Like
when
I
see
believe
14 points, I'm like, oh, that's not that much. But actually, for the Ducks, it might have been quite a bit.
yeah, like Max Comtois led the Ducks in scoring last year, and I believe it was only with like 10 or 11 goals. I'm just pulling. Oh, 16? Okay. Yeah. So not as bad as I remembered it, but still not great.
Heinen's 7 was in a 3-way tie for 5th with Troy Terry and Max Jones.
Yeah, it shows you how desperate we are for scoring right now.
So did Heinen play on special teams at all? I mean, I looked it up and he does have some minutes there, but was he somebody that you guys featured on special teams, or was he more just a 5-on-5 piece for the Anaheim Ducks?
I believe he was on the second power play unit. That didn't really see a lot of time. I mean, our power play was awful anyways. I usually closed my eyes when we were on the power play, but
if I'm not mistaken, it was 31st in the league.
Oh yeah, it was awful.
So
yeah, I think he got, like, in the second half of the season, he got quite a bit of time on the second power play unit, but that's obviously reduced power play time. So and I don't think he was on the penalty kill from what I remember either.
Yeah, as far as I can remember, I'm just trying to see if I can find anything for that, but I don't think so. He was a lot more of a 5-on-5 guy from what I can recall.
Yeah, I know in 2019-20 when he was with Boston, he did play on their power play. It seemed like a lot because he had, I think, 4 or 5 power play goals that year for Boston, but it didn't seem like he had that same amount of time when he went over to Anaheim, at least from the numbers. So that's why I wanted to ask you guys if you remember him as a 5-on-5 guy or as a special teams guy, but it makes sense that looking at the numbers that he was more a 5-on-5 guy than anything there.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely more 5-on-5. Yeah.
I have to reword my next question here because I had it written as what kind of goal scorer he is, and we have covered that. So I'm going to kind of reword this and saying, do you see potential in him being a higher goal scorer than just 7 a season? Because people have already kind of slated him as the Jared McCann replacement, and that's a big old hole to fill. We know he can't do that, but can he at least step up more than just 7 a season?
Well, where was McCann in your guys' lineup? Second or third?
It all depended on who was injured because there were times where he was the second liner. And honestly, last season he played with Crosby a little bit on the first line, but he found a home at the end of the year on the third line with Jeff Carter.
I feel like Heinen is a player with still like more potential. Like he hasn't quite hit his ceiling yet. And again, like Anaheim obviously was not a great team last season, finishing 30th out of 31 teams. And, as much as even I may question some of the moves the Pittsburgh Penguins have made in the past, you guys still have a decent team, like with solid players that you can, put up and down the lineup and that sort of thing. So I think it is just surrounding Heinen with, players that can benefit him a little bit more as well and that sort of thing, right? Just kind of develop a bit more of that chemistry. Because like I said, our lineups were an absolute blender. It was hard for anybody to develop chemistry. So I definitely think he's got a better shot in Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah, I just want to add too, I think he's a very smart hockey player. Like, he's not the flashiest. He's not going to be putting up highlight reel goals or crazy overtime winners, but he definitely knows where to be. He just is in the right position. That's the same thing, but he has a stick on the ice and is willing to shoot and also is looking for passing options. Like, he doesn't like to rush plays. Like, that's one thing that really stood out, was just how smart he is. So I could see him being a guy that does play in the top 6 with guys like Crosby and Malkin, just because, like, Crosby's going to tell him, hey, go here, and he's going to go there and just be open for a pass or something like that. So I think he has that potential of being just a guy that can play with veterans, which your team is getting more and more full of as the year goes on. So
one of the 3 oldest teams in the league going into this season.
Just to add, it's not necessarily about the goal scoring aspect, but one of the things that also really plagued us was just our back end play. And Danton Heinen seemed to be kind of one of the better guys actually of the forward group to be able to play defense, like a little bit closer, I'd say, to like a 2-way guy. But I don't really know, Carter, do you have like a way that you would describe him at least?
Two ways, not a bad way of putting it. Yeah.
Because like the guy he only had 10 giveaways in the entire 43 games that he played, but he had another 23 takeaways as well. So he's definitely a guy who can see the puck. So
Yeah,
I guess the question is, what do the analytics say about him? Yep, same.
I'm surprised Horwat asked an analytics question, because usually when I bring it up, he sits back and he just goes, "Nope, not touching that."
Yep.
Yeah, I'm taking a look through some of this right now as well. So, yeah, he's definitely a guy who will be in on the play. Out of his 7 assists for the season, 6 of them were the primaries. And yeah, so 6 out of his 14 points being that guy to kind of set it up and whatnot. And just taking a look at some of his on ice stuff. He is a guy who can eat up some minutes. I do recall that. Where's his average time on ice here? Why can't I find this crap?
Was it like 14:46?
Yeah, it
I
was
think it was
something
something
like
around
that.
that.
Yeah, something around the 14-minute mark. So yeah, he's a guy that can eat minutes if you need him to. So
I find it interesting that you guys say that he's somebody that could potentially play with Crosby because he has that hockey IQ and he has the ability to play up and down the lineup. I don't think anybody's mentioned him in that sort of light since he came over a couple weeks ago when he was signed. I know there's a player that they also signed that has played with Crosby, even though some people have said he should not be playing with Sidney Crosby, and that's Dom Simone. I know you guys pay attention to the Calgary Flames. You're a little bit of Blasty lovers, which Horwat is as well, so he can bond with you in that. But was Dom Simone even noticeable? I know he only played 11 games and he did not touch the score sheet, but do you even remember him touching the ice for the Calgary Flames last season?
not overly. And that was another case of line blending, especially for the first half of the season under Jeff Ward there in Calgary. It was just a little bit different every night. Nothing could be consistent to that until Daryl Sutter came in. And yeah, and even then it wasn't really a whole lot. So I do remember he was a guy that, could have been in spots compared to some other guys sometimes, at least in the bottom 6 of the Flames, just for kind of what they were looking for at that. But yeah, they didn't really give him a whole lot of a chance. So just taking a look, just comparing, the season before in 1920 with Pittsburgh, even just the games played, right? It shows that Calgary just, for whatever reason, didn't want to utilize him as much, because he went from 64 games played to 11.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, he was a very late summer signing for those guys, right close to the training camp, I believe.
From what I can remember as well.
So maybe just a depth option there in case of injury, and they just decided not to utilize him.
Yeah, but there was definitely a few guys that Calgary mishandled last year, in my opinion. So Josh Levo being another one, I would have liked to see him a bit more in that lineup. So
yeah, Dom Simone went from playing on a first line for 60-plus games with Sidney Crosby to the taxi squad, mostly. And he's another analytical piece, but we're going to move off of him because we just wanted to know if he was visible at all to big negotiations, because the Penguins have been trying to, maybe, who knows, land a new goalie somehow. What is the hypothetical? Yep. What is the hypothetical trade for John Gibson? What do you want from us for that?
Sidney Crosby 5 years ago. Oh man, honestly, it would have to be a massive package coming back, just because John Gibson is so integral to the few wins that this Ducks team even got this season. It's honestly, we probably could have been in 31st. We could have been worse than Buffalo if not for John Gibson, I feel.
Oh, that's a lofty statement. I mean, that's basically wow. I mean, you got to give John Gibson a lifetime achievement award if that's what he actually did.
Carter, am I wrong on that,
no,
am I just looking through it through the rose-tinted glasses because I'm a goalie myself?
No, I don't think so. You look at some of the performances, we did okay sometimes against teams like Colorado and Vegas, and but it was really only because John Gibson was standing on his head. And I know Miller is obviously quite a few years older, but you just look at the difference between having Gibson and Miller in net. It was night and day. And like I said, age was a big factor in that as well. Stalock was kind of more in the middle, or Stolarz. Sorry, my my Edmonton's showing. Like he was kind of in the middle of those two, but the you could definitely tell that that even if the team played the same in front of any of the three goalies, the result tended to be better when John Gibson was in net, just because he was standing on his head. He's not to compare him to Carey Price, but he just plays calmly like Carey Price. Not to say he's the same or as good, but because that's a whole other debate. But yeah, he just brings a sense of calmness, I think, that is very much needed for the young Ducks team. So
yeah, and with Gibson being from around Pittsburgh and everybody else basically shifting goaltenders, that's going to be a continued conversation. So I know you guys are probably tired of hearing Pittsburgh fans say, hey, John Gibson linked to Pittsburgh. You're probably going to hear it until the Penguins get another goaltender, or until John Gibson flat out comes out and says, I'm not going to Pittsburgh, or somebody in the Ducks organization is like, this is not happening. It's always going to be a hypothetical here in the 4-1-2 at least.
Well, at least we know it won't come from our way, because Anaheim is very tight-lipped about everything.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, even the only way that you could have found out about Ryan Getzlaf's 1-year contract was if you went on Cap Friendly. They didn't post any of that stuff as to what the contract was or anything like that. So.
Oh, that's amazing. Speaking of another player that has been talked in trades and hasn't been pulled the trigger yet, Rickard Rakell's going into the last year of his contract. Does he finally get traded this season, or does he play out his contract here with Anaheim?
I hope he gets traded. That's not to say I don't like having him on the Ducks, but we will lose him for nothing, honestly, if he were to continue to play it out and that sort of thing. And, I totally understand, Bob Murray wanting to stay steadfast on his asking price, but the thing is, it is pretty high, honestly. So he could just tone it down just a little bit, take out the second kind of mid pick, and I think you could get something done, honestly. So
yeah, and I think he definitely goes to a contender at or near the trade deadline, which Pittsburgh will probably very much be in a playoff position by then. So I think he's definitely a real possibility to just flesh out the middle six. You guys always seem to make a trade like that, come trade deadlining, just like a depth second, third line guy. And I think Rickard Rakell is that, a very good second or third line guy. But I could definitely see him making his way to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we also won't know for a little while, because our new GM, Ron Hextall, is just as tight-lipped as maybe you guys are. I mean, we don't have Jim Rutherford anymore, who would straight up say, I'm trying to trade for John Gibson. Or I am trying to trade for Marc-Andre Fleury. He would straight up say things like that. But back to it, you mentioned him already. Is this Ryan Getzlaf's last ride in Anaheim or even the NHL?
I feel like it could be. Part of the reason I think he did come back is we do have some young guys that just need a little bit more mentoring in Max Comtois and Trevor Zegras, at least at the center position, but they have the potential to be great centermen. Maybe not as far, but in comparison to kind of like a Perry Getzlaf tandem that we used to have. And I wanted that Perry reunion, honestly, back in Anaheim. So I was actually a little bit upset that he did go to Tampa Bay, but hey, if you can't beat him, join him, right? But I think this is at least, I think this could be the last year. He is getting a little bit older, and like I said, just for that mentor role, and also to have a proper farewell in front of fans in Anaheim, right? Because the end of the season, I think they were only allowing 20% capacity or something like that at Honda Center, so not really a whole lot of people. So, for a Hall of Fame career such as his, right, and in the city of Anaheim, since the days of the Mighty Ducks, that's the unbelievable part, right? I think he deserves a proper send-off, and that's part of the reason of him coming back for one more year.
I think another reason too is he's only 6 points away from the all-time Ducks point scorer. He's behind Teemu Selanne there. 982. So also not that far off from 1,000 points. So I think just one more season to get that number 1 on the Ducks all-time list, and then also pass 1,000. Just that milestone that pretty much every guy in the NHL dreams of hitting. So I think that's a huge part of just the 1-year deal. If he was going to stay longer, I feel like they would have signed him for 2 or 3 more years, but just the 1-year deal to me says, this is the last year for him in Anaheim and probably the NHL. So
That's a young Ducks team. They're going to be hurting after that 1,000th game gift, whatever they have to get Getzlaf. They're going to be like, this is like half of our salary for the year, guy.
Yeah, pretty much. And even then, like, I guess we didn't really talk about this, Carter. What did you think about I guess we did. But what did you think about that price again at $4.5 million when he was making $9 million?
Yeah, it's a little steep, the 4.5 for 1 year. Like, a lot of veterans, in my mind, just sign for like the $1.5 million team friendly.
Unless you're Obi.
But unless you're Obi, of course, yeah.
But I guess I don't know. He must need that extra $500,000 at least for his chickens there that he's got. So,
speaking of those young players, I did want to ask about Trevor Zegras. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him when talking to you guys. But he was sent back down after his first stint to start becoming more of a center. Get used to that in the AHL. Do you think we see him for a full year next year, or is there still stuff that he needs to figure out in the AHL as far as the center ice position?
I think a better question, or a question that we'll probably be asking is, should he be in the NHL for the next year? And the answer is yes. Will he be? Well, it depends on how the coin toss lands with Bob Murray and Dallas Eakins, because that's seems to be
that's his name, Dallas Eakins.
You're welcome. Yeah, like, it's so hard to tell what they're gonna do. Like, they seem very cautious with developing their young guys, and I mean, it's better than, I guess, just throwing them on the top line and hoping for the best. The good old Edmonton Oilers and Buffalo Sabres, where we need to win now. Let's just throw our 18-year-old on the top line and hope he scores 80 points, kind of thing. So I think it's better to be a little bit overly cautious. Nate, I know, disagrees, but yeah, I think most likely we see him for the full year at that center position, probably second line, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't mind, being that little bit cautious and, giving him that time in the AHL. That's perfect because, again, kind of drawing from another comparison, that was exactly what the Anaheim Ducks did with Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry. They did play for quite a while, actually, in the AHL during their first season and then came up. My issue more was kind of the back and forth of it, right? Like, he played a few games in the AHL. He was doing great. And then brought him up to the NHL and just really babied him to the point of like giving him, like, just taking him out of the lineup just for rest days, basically, and that kind of thing. And like, I know that's been a thing going on in the NBA, but that's just not really the NHL, especially when you're trying to develop somebody. And, then it was, okay, we're near the end of the season. We're going to send him back down to the AHL to work on his center play. But it's like, okay, that's where that is his natural position, is center. So why didn't we start him at that in the AHL, build that up, then bring him to the NHL and build him from there, right? It seemed a little bit like yes, give him a few games in the NHL for him to get the taste of it, send him back, sure. But I think it just got drawn out way too long, and then it also came up of, they're only going to play him so many games so that they can get an additional year of unrestricted free agency out of him in 8 years down the line or something like that. And I'm like, okay, if you're that worried about 8 years down the line, like, there is a problem here. So
yeah, I think the one benefit of going back to a normal schedule where you play everybody a couple of years is that the young guys will start to see what other rookies around the league are doing. Hopefully Zegras takes a couple pages from Cole Caulfield and just like goes lights out in like overtime and pots like 40 goals on the season or something like that. That would be really nice to just see him go on a tear. But I think, with just a little bit more competition and seeing more teams and more players, I think will really benefit Zegras' play and Drysdale as well. So.
If I remember correctly, I think the Penguins play the Ducks pretty early in the season in their first, I believe it's like 8-game homestand after they play the two Florida teams. So I think we'll see the Ducks pretty early on in the season there.
That'll be exciting. We'll have to do a crossover around then. So
most definitely. I think Horwat has one last one for you too.
Yeah, well, I was going to make one more comment about John Gibson. That's when you guys leave him, drop him off at the door for us.
Or we can. I was going to say we can pull a Calgary and Toronto, and we'll just bring him there, and then he'll suit up for you guys. It's all good.
Yeah, the way baseball does a ton of trades. Why not do it here? But I have a music question for you guys, and it's pretty simple.
Right.
What albums have been on repeat for you this summer, and are they new ones or old ones, and who are they from?
Carter, go for it.
Sure. This is kind of my guilty pleasure album. Not gonna lie. Olivia Rodrigo's new album,
Nice.
Sour. I've been
yeah.
bumping to that one. Brutal, Good for You, and Driver's License are the big three that I like. So it's not the album I need right now. It's the album I needed, like 5-6 years ago when I was in high school. But it's still really good. I'm enjoying that.
I've heard that one through proxy because my girlfriend just loves to play that one out loud all the time. So I've heard just about every song unwillingly.
I'm a huge all-time low guy, and I've been on a high of Wake Up Sunshine since it came out last year, like right at the start of quarantine, and everything like that. And they've been dropping a couple singles during this year as well. I'm guessing to lead up to a new album. They just put out a new song. I think it was last Friday, called PMA, Postmodern Anxiety, and I have been jamming to that at least 10 times a day, honestly. So
Prepping for sad summer, man. That's all it is.
dude, I got tickets for them in Calgary in November, and it's gonna be my first time seeing them. I am so hyped. Even got like the VIPs and everything. I'm so ready for it.
I think I've seen them before. I'm trying to remember back. I've seen them before, probably at Warped Tour once, but I will be. Hopefully, nothing shuts down by then. But I should be working at Stage AE whenever Sad Summer rolls through on September 7th. So.
I don't know if I'm allowed to answer your question, but I've been listening to OK Orchestra from AJR since it came out like 2 months ago. So that's my. I have to take a break here because I've listened to it almost too much.
Nice. Good one. I got a quick Warp Tour story here. So it doesn't come through Canada, but my family and I had taken a vacation down to Las Vegas, and as we were in the cab to our hotel, I see, like one of the billboards flash, and it's like, oh, Warp Tour, and like some of the lineup and that sort of thing and the dates. And then I realized, I'm like, wait, that's in like 3 days. And I was like I said out loud, I'm like, oh, Warp Tour is here. And my dad just goes, yeah, I saw that, but I wasn't sure if there was any of the bands like in that you would be interested in. And I pulled up the lineup, and I'm like, Dad, I would have had like overlapping shows. Like, what the hell?
What year did you say it was?
That was. What year was that? I think it was 2016. So yeah, because there was who was on that tour?
Who was on that tour?
Falling in Reverse, Mayday Parade.
16 was a good year, I remember.
Yeah. I just remember like a bunch of bands that were just like, man, like some of them would have overlapped and whatnot. And I just remember like just chilling at the hotel room, like at the end of the night, and scrolling through, and like all the pictures and videos from that day were coming out, and like it was at the Hard Rock Hotel, and they had one of the stages in like the pool area. But there's already the rule of like no moshing, right? Because they don't want to get sued and that kind of stuff.
The no moshing rule, yeah.
But people took the advantage of, oh, hey, the pool is open. You move a lot slower in the pool. And so they were kind of having a mosh pit in the pool. And I was like, man, I could have been at that.
That's good.
So my parents did try to get me a ticket, actually, like once they realized like we were trying, but they were all gone. So, and because they were even like, well, we had to get 2 and that sort of thing. I'm like, just send me on my own. They're like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm like 19. Yeah, just send me on my own.
Absolutely. I've gone to multiple Warped Tours by myself. I think it's the way to do it, because you don't have to go to anyone else's band you don't want to see. You just do your thing the whole day. It's an awesome way of doing it.
Nice. Yeah, I wish I could have made that one, man. It would have been so much fun.
That was a good one.
Well, boys, thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate you jumping on and talking Danton Heinen, a little bit of Dom Simone for everybody's pleasure, and then obviously about the Ducks and some music here as well. But I want to give you guys this opportunity to let our listeners know where they can find you and what's coming up for you guys on the Quack Report.
Yeah, well, you can follow my personal Twitter at Carter_Potts, POTTS_97. And you can follow the show at Quack Report Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We do live streams. Usually every Wednesday. We're taking, this week off, obviously. And, we're joining you guys here. But we'll be back next week with a live stream, which you can catch on the platforms I just mentioned, as well as at HockeyPodNet on Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, and you can follow my personal at Tatenamas, TEATENHOMAS. I post a variety of stuff. Obviously, a lot of hockey on there, but there's some music takes and that kind of thing on there too. And just my usual nonsense, I guess.
Well, thank you boys for joining us. We really appreciate it. And like you said, we'll have to get together once the season starts around that first matchup between the Penguins and the Ducks to talk about where you're going to leave John Gibson and Rickard Rakell for us.
For sure. Thanks for having us on, guys.
Thanks, guys.